Did you know Santa Claus hasn't always been the jolly, red-suited, rotund grandpop's gift giver with a reindeer-drawn sleigh we all know? Santa has evolved over time, influenced by stories and legends about St. Nicholas, Sinterklaas, and Father Christmas, and over centuries of gift cards, stories, advertisements, posters, and movies. In this story, the legend of Santa spans multiple continents, assumes many different identities, takes a trip through the Civil War, and gets a makeover from a New York advertising firm. So let's get started at the very beginning. The very first Santa Claus was inspired by St. Nicholas of Myra, a 4th century Greek bishop. Belonging to a wealthy family, St. Nicholas was renowned for his generosity towards the less fortunate. The most famous legend surrounding him is the one in which he saves 3 daughters from being sold into slavery by their father, as he had no money to pay for their dowry and marry them off. St. Nicholas is said to have tossed gold through an open window into their home, thus saving them from their fate, and coincidentally the gold landed in a sock drying by the fireplace. So, other children started hanging stockings by their fires, in hopes St. Nicholas would toss gifts to them as well. Down the line, European cultures adapted their versions of St. Nicholas. In Swiss and German cultures, Kris Kringle accompanied St. Nicholas to deliver presents to well-behaved children. Jultomten was a happy elf delivering gifts on a sleigh drawn by goats in Sweden. Then there was Father Christmas in England, and Père Noël in France. In the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, Lorraine, and parts of Germany, he is known as Sinterklaas. But St. Nicholas or Sinterklaas wasn't your jolly bearded big red man. He used to wear green, and sometimes blue and purple too. In the Netherlands and Belgium, St. Nicholas became Sinterklaas, a skinny, elderly man with flowing white hair and beard, dressed in red, fur-trimmed robes with the mitre of a bishop. In mid-November, Sinterklaas arrives on a steamboat from Spain and parades through towns on an impossibly fast white horse who was capable of flight, bearing a large red book with the names of all good little girls and boys, and distributing candy and special ginger cookies. The night of St. Nicholas's Eve, December 5th, he delivers presents, flying from rooftop to rooftop and going down the chimney to deposit presents in the shoes left by children's beds and taking the snacks left for his horse. As St. Nicholas's tradition spread throughout Europe, it also adopted German and Celtic pagan aspects to it. Prior to Christianity, the Germanic people celebrated Yule. During this period, supernatural and ghostly occurrences were said to increase in frequency, such as the Wild Hunt, a ghostly procession through the sky thought to be led by Odin himself. Sounds a lot like Santa riding on his sleigh led by Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer from the North Pole. Except Santa was made to look more friendly, unlike the one-eyed fierce warrior Odin. Father Christmas is the English personification of Christmas. Now synonymous with Santa Claus, the folkloric roots of Father Christmas go back to at least the 6th century. A tall bearded man, clad in fur-trimmed robes, he embodies Christmas cheer. Associated with peace, joy, feasting, and revelry, Father Christmas brings presents to good children and punishes the bad ones. During the Victorian era, there was a resurgence of interest in Father Christmas, as epitomized in a colorized edition of John Leech's engraving for Charles Dickens' Ghost of Christmas Present. In all this, one question arises: how did Christmas reach America? Well, the answer is quite simple: with the first immigrants, the Pilgrims. By the 17th century, religious reforms were gaining speed in England, and they also impacted how Christmas was celebrated. Oliver Cromwell and the Puritans cancelled Christmas, and it didn't return until Charles II returned to the throne. So when the Pilgrims or the English separatists came to America in 1620, they didn't bring Christmas with them, and it was actually outlawed in Boston from 1659 to 1681. Anyone exhibiting the Christmas spirit was fined 5 shillings. In the 200 years that followed, and as a means of preserving their culture and traditions in the face of British settlement, a group of Dutch intellectuals gathered together and called themselves the Knickerbockers. A prominent member of the group was a writer named Washington Irving, who published a book called The Knickerbockers' History of New York, containing satirical versions of Dutch traditions and stories. Throughout the book, there were several dozen references to a Sinterklaas, an adaptation of Saint Nicholas, accompanied by details of him flying across the sky in a wagon and dropped presents down chimneys for good little boys and girls. Washington's wild, endearing description of the saint very quickly became known to New Yorkers. The English settlers enthusiastically adopted the joyful Dutch celebrations of St. Nicholas's Day, and gradually began to combine them with their own traditions of celebrating Christmas and the New Year. When it comes to pronunciation, it's easy to see how Sinterklaas can translate to Santa Claus when you apply the accent of an English-speaking New Yorker. In the mid-1800s, it was popular to draw Santa Claus either in his bishop's robe or as a man with a pointed hat, long coat, and straight beard. It wasn't uncommon to see Santa drawn as quite tall and gaunt. This changed in 1863 when Harper's Weekly hired a 21-year-old man named Thomas Nast to draw a picture of Santa Claus bringing gifts to troops fighting in the American Civil War. That Santa that Thomas drew combined Clement's description of St. Nicholas from the night before Christmas with the all-too-familiar propaganda image of Uncle Sam. Nast's Santa was a jolly, rolly-poly old man who wore a star-spangled jacket, striped pants, and a cap. It was so popular that every year for 40 years, when the magazines asked Nast to draw Santa, he stuck with the same concept. Although he did eventually drop the stars and stripes in favor of a plain wool suit. Although this woolen suit was sometimes green, Nast popularized St. Nick's famous red clothes more than 4 decades prior to the Coca-Cola Company's depiction of Santa, contrary to the rumor that Coca-Cola made Santa red. Coca-Cola led the change through much of the 20th century, although it would be unfair to say Coca-Cola invented Santa. The company's relationship with Santa began in the 1920s, when Coca-Cola first began advertising in American magazines, like the Saturday Evening Post during the festive season. The ads used images of a man dressed as Santa, not dissimilar in appearance to Santa Claus in Thomas Nast's depiction from the mid-1800s. This Santa was usually depicted outside the world's largest soda fountain or visiting high-profile department stores, and things stayed that way until the 1930s. Christmas advertising had become a powerful part of Coca-Cola's business operations. In 1931, the company commissioned the services of DRC advertising agency and Michigan-born artist Haddon Sundblom to create a campaign featuring a more wholesome and approachable Santa Claus. For his inspiration, Haddon turned to Clement's The Night Before Christmas. The depiction of Santa as a jolly old elf, dressed in red furs, who goes down chimneys to give children their gifts, was instrumental in laying the foundation of our image of the modern Santa Claus. In the early days, Haddon called upon his friend, retired salesman Lou Prentice, to act as a life model on which he based his images. When Lou passed away, Sundblom used himself as a model and painted while looking into a mirror. From 1931 to 1964, Coca-Cola advertising showed Santa delivering toys, pausing to read a letter and enjoying a Coke, visiting with children who stayed up to greet him, and raiding the refrigerators at a number of homes. People paid such close attention to the Coca-Cola Santa images that when anything changed, they sent letters to the Coca-Cola Company. One year, Santa's large belt was backwards. Another year, Santa Claus appeared without a wedding ring, causing fans to write asking what happened to Mrs. Claus. So Haddon created his final version of Santa Claus in 1964, and that still remains the portrayal of Santa we have today. Which Santa Claus did you like best? Comment down in the section below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.